A little over 6 years ago, Chevy was looking to shake up the electric vehicle space with the first ever Chevrolet Bolt. This was a significant car because it was the first long-range EV that was designed to appeal to the masses due to its low starting price. Now, unfortunately for the company, sales didn't really pan out that way as everyone continued to buy Teslas, which is why the company introduced an all-new version of the Bolt back in 2022. This particular one that I'm showing you is a 2023 Bolt EUV. It's technically a new model because it's a little bit taller and it's about 6 inches longer overall to give buyers more space in the back seat. So as you can see this week, we are testing out this 2023 Bolt EUV in the Premier trim, and the big question I answered, if you guys are looking to buy or go into the electric vehicle space and you don't want to break the bank, how does this 2023 Bolt EUV stack up? Stay tuned to find out. Now, before we start talking about the exterior styling changes of the Bolt EUV, I want to show you guys what's underneath the hood, because as you guys know, with an electric vehicle, this is the million-dollar question. Obviously, as you can see, there is no frunk, and the powertrain here is pretty much carried over from the previous generation. Now, as you can see, you're going to find one electric motor powering the front axle, which means this vehicle is front-wheel drive. It's the same powertrain, like I said, from the previous generation, which means you have 200 horsepower, 266 pound-feet of torque going through a 1-speed reduction gear transmission. It's powered by a 65 kilowatt-hour lithium-ion battery pack. So it's the same battery pack as last year, which means Chevrolet says this model will go up to 247 miles on a full charge. Now, I'll test that out in my actual week-long test, and Chevrolet also says you should get to 60 in around 7 seconds. We also have our equipment. We'll see what we can get from that regard. This vehicle remains, as I said earlier, front-wheel drive. There is no all-wheel drive version available. That's kind of a missed opportunity for Chevy. Would have loved to see them slap on a rear motor at the back, giving this vehicle all-wheel drive. Because, however, it is only a front-wheel drive vehicle, it is a lot lighter than some of the EVs. As this one sits, it weighs in at around 3,700 pounds. It's about 100 pounds heavier versus the standard Bolt. But closing the hood, let's go ahead and take a look at the styling of this model. Now, first of all, if you guys remember the dorky looks of the regular Bolt, you can see the EUV does address some of that a little bit. I do like the fact that it's a little bit taller, it's a little bit longer. Sadly, however, it's not any wider, and that definitely still gives it kind of a dorky hatchback look to it. I do like, however, the new lighting signature. You can see there is a sequential LED turn signal here where the headlight and daytime headlight and the daytime running light is kind of separated from each other. That's also for the LED running light. You can see there's the LED low and high beams. There is a functional vent over there that helps to create an air current, and you can see an air curtain over the wheels, and then you can see over here the front fascia has a completely closed off grille, although there is some openings right there to allow for a little bit of cooling. I do like how Chevy's been doing kind of like the black bow tie, and then my tester also has a front camera system. But overall, in this like silver ice blue metallic exterior, it's a relatively decent looking car. Although I will say it doesn't have the same kind of presence that you're going to get from something even like a Volkswagen ID4, which you could compare to this vehicle, but you have to keep in mind that Chevy bills this as one of the least expensive EVs that you can buy. Now, moving around the side profile, you can see this is where they stretched out the vehicle by 6.3 inches in the overall length, but still at 169.5 inches long, it's still a small vehicle, and its wheelbase is around 105.3 inches long. That's about 3 inches longer versus the standard Bolt. It's only about 0.5 inches taller, so it's not that much taller, and ground clearance is only 5.6 inches. So again, this is not really an SUV, even though Chevrolet likes to call it that. Now, the wheels is also what makes this car look a little bit dorky. You can see it's got a small 17-inch wheel riding on two 1550 series economy-minded Michelin tires. I do wish that Chevy had gone with a bigger wheel and tire to give this car, again, a better stance to it. It just looks like it has small wheels and a big body. Typical SUV fashion, it has the black paint or the unpainted gray cladding along the entire portion of the vehicle. And then you can see here's the charge port door for this car. It does come standard with DC fast charging, and this port here is illuminated, which is nice. However, the car does have an 11.5 kilowatt onboard charger, which means you can fully charge this vehicle on a level 2 in about 7 hours, which is pretty fast. However, if you want to DC fast charge this car, the Bolt only accepts a maximum of 50 kilowatts, which means it's going to take about an hour, at least an hour to an hour and a half, to fast charge this vehicle on longer trips. So that's going to be the biggest inconvenience for this car. If you plan to take it on longer road trips, you will be spending about 3 times the amount of time at the fast charger compared to a lot of its competitors. Now over here you can see the side mirror has this interesting black painted area along with a body colored area. I do like the integrated turn signal mirrors. Very traditional door handles. They don't open up in any weird way. You can see there are roof rails. That's how you know this is the EUV. And I'm also surprised to see a panoramic glass style sunroof, which is pretty nice. Although I am noticing again, the rear window is not tinted. Typically that's how you know this is an SUV, because the rear window is tinted, but not on the EUV. So I imagine a lot of owners are gonna probably wanna do that. The rear suspension is a semi-independent torsion beam, so a lot of competitors, again, do a full independent suspension. That's how you know this car has more of an economy-minded route. And then at the back here, I do think the back looks better than the front. It still has, again, that narrow appearance to it, but I do like how the turn signal is full LED. You have the LED brake lights over there, and then you can see it says Bolt EUV in the Premier trim. I do like the way the Bolt logo looks. And then down here you can see, I believe your reverse light is down there. And then you have some parking sensors and then more of that unpainted gray cladding at the back to give this more of a crossover like look to it. Now, opening up the trunk area, I wish I could say that Chevy expanded the trunk for the EUV. However, it's still the same, about 16.3 cubic feet of overall space. Something like the Mach-E is going to give you roughly twice the space. If you want to fold down those seats, it will expand it out to around 56.5. And then underneath here, there is a fairly large underfloor storage area to give you a little bit more space. So the latest Bolt isn't exactly a looker on the outside, but what about the interior? That's where you're going to be spending most of your time. Here's the key fob for the vehicle. You can see this is the typical Chevy key. It's got the black bow tie emblem on it. It does have remote start on the outside of the fob, or on the fob itself, and it's a fairly nice feeling key. As you can see, as you approach the vehicle, as soon as you touch the back of the door handle, sadly it doesn't open. You have to touch the button that will actually unlock the door for you. And then as you can see also, my tester has kind of like a black bluish interior with some contrasting stitching. The Premier grade includes the leather seats with the 8-way power adjustment, which is nice. No memory seats, however, but these seats are heated and ventilated, so that's a really nice surprise. You have to go for the Premier trim to get the ventilated seats, which is kind of a hard option to find, especially if you guys are looking at an economy-minded electric vehicle, so that's pretty good. The door panel, you can see, has a soft touch injection molded plastic on the upper portion. It is also soft touch right here with some stitching where your elbow would rest. There's some fake silver painted plastic over here, and then the windows, you can see they have the typical tactile feel that Chevys have, and it's an automatic up down for the front, an automatic down only for the back, but not auto up. Hard touch plastic down here, and then there's a 7-speaker Bose stereo that this model has included as a Sun and Sound package, and it sounds pretty decent, remember, considering the price point of this car. Now, getting inside, it has a low step-in height like a car, so again, it's an SUV, but it doesn't really feel all that high. And then as I get in and shut the door has a somewhat tinny sounding thunk, although that noise that you heard, that's the, I guess, the chime that starts up, that kind of welcomes you as you get into the vehicle. I'm not sure I love the noise. You can see there it sounds a little tinny without the noise. It was kind of masking that earlier. But starting the vehicle up, you can see the start-stop button is right here where you'd expect it to be. The steering wheel kind of blocks it, but when you turn the vehicle on, you can see it has the typical GM bong. I would really like to see the company get rid of that sound. And then over here, you can see there's a 7-inch display in the center stack, or the instrument cluster. And then there's a larger 10.2-inch display here, which is technically running on the older Chevrolet MyLink infotainment system. It does, however, have wireless Apple CarPlay and Android Auto, so that's pretty nice. As you can see, my phone is connected. It does look great. It's pretty quick. It's pretty snappy. It's very easy to use, and I like how there's still a tuning knob and a volume knob and a separate home screen over there, so that's all very nice. This model here also does have factory embedded navigation, where it should also plan your routes when you guys are putting in a trip. It should also put in charging stops along the way, although I haven't had a chance to actually test that out. There's also an energy monitor here that shows how much charge the battery has, where the energy flow is going, and it can also show like charging options over here, which is all really great. The graphics here are perfectly fine as well. Most of you are also going to probably just use the CarPlay and just leave it at that. But overall, it's a nice system. When I put the vehicle into reverse, you can see there's your full 360 camera that's included on this model. And then you can see here, it also offers several different views, although the resolution there gets a little bit grainy when you start going into those different views. Now, in terms of the rest of the interior materials, let me start with the steering wheel. I do like how the steering wheel looks. It's got leather on the wheel. It's got that paddle shifter there for the full regen braking, and then you can see my tester also has Super Cruise. That's the status bar, and that's the camera that watches my face to make sure that I'm paying attention to the road. You can access it via the button over here, along with your climate or your audio controls over here, and then you can also adjust that screen a little bit. The wheel itself also has a tilt and telescoping function, which offers a decent amount of adjustability and range. The horn Sounds a little bit puny. I definitely think it goes probably with the puny nature of the vehicle. And then you can see here, the dashboard has this soft touch injection molded plastic with the faux stitching. Feels a little bit rubberized, doesn't really feel all that high quality. This feels a little bit nicer with the perforated leather on this portion of the dash, and there's some piano black plastic trim. The turn signal stalks, they do have that typical Chevy feel. They feel a little bit on the chitsy side, but again, everything is to a price point. I do like the digital camera rearview mirror. Wasn't expecting to find something like that in this type of vehicle. And then over here, you can see it's just incandescent bulbs for the map lights, but that's kind of an easy fix if you guys don't like that. Over here, you can see this is your one drive mode selector. It does have a sport mode. It's either on or off. There's no comfort mode or eco mode. And then you can see here, you can turn off the lane keep assist. This is a big button to turn off the stability control. And then you have a wireless phone charging pad there where my iPhone 12 Pro Max fits. You have dual zone climate control. Your heated and ventilated seats are controlled via this little toggle right here. So again, nice that Chevy included that. You also have a heated steering wheel, which I wasn't expecting, along with dual zone climate control. Your shifter over here is this little toggle, a mixture of toggles and buttons and whatnot. You have a little bit of storage over here, electronic parking brake. This is your one pedal drive feature where you basically turn it on or off. It works pretty well. I'll show you guys that a little bit more on the driving scene. Then you can see cup holders over here, and then a padded armrest over here with a decent sized center console. But if you're looking for the USB charging, it's actually all the way down there. You can see there's a USB-A and a USB-C. You can't really see it when you're sitting up in the vehicle. You have to go down and stare at it. It's pretty deeply inset in there, so that could have been a better location there where it's a little bit more accessible. The seats have been redesigned, but they still feel a little bit flat and narrow. The interior itself feels very narrow in general. So kind of keep that in mind if you guys are looking for a more spacious feeling cabin. The glove box, you can see, is pretty large. It's a bin style. It's damped but not lined with felt. There's good storage pockets over there. But overall, the interior has a lot of impressive tech like the Super Cruise and the ventilated seats. Just have to keep in mind that the materials are a little bit cheap. The seats aren't the most comfortable for me, and it also feels a little bit claustrophobic. Looking at the back seat, the whole reason why you want to look at the EUV is because of that 3-inch stretch in the wheelbase. You get about 3 inches more legroom back here, giving you a little over 39 inches, which makes it among the roomiest in the segment. The door panel, sadly, is a hard touch plastic on the upper portion. It is padded over here with that dark blue leather with the contrasting stitching. But as you can see, as I get into this vehicle, it does have a massive back seat. So that's something that you can be excited about if you guys need to plan to carry adults back here. You can see the floor is also completely flat, which is nice. You have 2 USB charging ports, no rear seat air vents. That would have been nice if Chevy threw in. But again, this is at a price point. You get one storage pocket, and then there's also adjustable headrest back here, along with a fold-down armrest that gives you 2 cup holders. I am also surprised to see heated back seats, 1-level heated back seats. Again, still a really nice surprise. And then the pano roof doesn't really come into the back of the vehicle. I would have liked to see that. The headroom is compromised slightly because of the roof, but at least Chevy gives you a pretty decent sized sunroof, especially in this class of car. So overall, back seat is definitely a huge improvement, but you still have to deal with the fact that the cabin does feel a little bit narrow. So it's been about a year since I had a chance to drive this redesigned Chevrolet Bolt. Redesigned is kind of in quotes here because this EUV model is built off of the previous generation, but Chevrolet made it about 6 inches longer overall, 3-inch stretch in the wheelbase. There was a huge stop sale on this vehicle for like half the year because Chevy couldn't figure out how to fix the batteries to keep them from catching fire. Thankfully, that fix is now in place, and we are driving this 2023 model, which got a significant price cut this year, about $6,300, which is a game changer. This makes it one of the cheapest long-range EVs that you can buy. So I'm going to be able to overlook some of this car's, the previous car's, quibbles that I had with it, a lot of people had with it. But the first thing I do want to test out, we've got about 95% charge right now. I want to test out the 0 to 60. Chevrolet says 7 seconds. This car is front-wheel drive, remember. It only has 1 electric motor, 200 horsepower. I can feel it limiting the power up at the very, very beginning because it's trying to prevent wheel spin. 6.82 seconds. That's actually not bad. It feels quicker than that number would suggest, but remember, this is a front-wheel drive, economy-minded hatchback that's raised up ever so slightly with only 5.5 inches of ground clearance. It's not really an SUV, but Chevy likes to call it an SUV. But 6.82 is pretty darn respectable for something that's this affordable. And you know what? I do appreciate the fact that Chevy is able to reduce the price of this car considering how everything is going more and more expensive. I mean, look at Ford, how they jacked up the price of the Mach-E by like $8,300 on certain models. The Lightning also had a similar effect. Chevy went the other direction, and that's what's going to make this car super appealing to people who are on a budget, especially next year once the tax credit comes back for this vehicle. It doesn't like it when you brake torque it, so don't do that, but let's go ahead and see what we can get here. It ramps the power on very slowly in the beginning, 7.14 there, so this is going slightly more uphill versus over there we were going on a level surface. 6.82, again, is pretty respectable, but I was hoping that Chevy would add all-wheel drive to this vehicle. They would have added a little bit more power, but you have to keep in mind what the Bolt EUV competes with. I mean, Chevrolet will tell you it competes something along with the lines of like the Volkswagen ID4, the Hyundai Kona Electric, the Nissan Leaf, which sadly I believe the Leaf is going to be discontinued. But as an economy-minded vehicle, see right there, I actually put my foot down and it does spin the tires a little bit because these are pretty narrow 215 wide tires. But Chevy does give you full power when you put your foot down when you're going. So you can see I have my foot down here. It's showing almost 160 kilowatts of total output, which again, if you convert that to horsepower, that should be 200 horsepower. On a full charge, this vehicle was showing around 270 miles. The EPA rates it at 247. There's also a little range, this graph here, a little bar that shows a minimum range of 209, max right now 301. So in my week's worth of testing, I've been averaging around 250-ish miles, depending on if you're more highway, it's going to use more range. If you're less highway, it's going to have better range because remember the regen brake. This car does have a one-pedal drive feature, and it also has this regen paddle shifter here that if I pull this, it actually will give you maximum regen and it'll bring the vehicle down to a full stop. It's at your control here from this little paddle shifter, which I kind of like. It's a good idea. I think that was the funniest thing about this Bolt platform is when you first when it first came out, is because it was front-wheel drive. Remember, vehicles like from Tesla were rear-wheel drive. You could just easily roast the front tires, and it's almost like Chevy did it on purpose because they put these skinny little economy-minded tires on the front of this vehicle, or they're all around the car. 215 is probably the skinniest I've ever seen for an EV, with hot hatch levels of horsepower and torque especially. But, you know, this car, considering its economy-minded roots, the ride quality, we've got a semi-independent rear suspension. It's not fully independent front suspension. The steering in this car is actually not bad. The ride quality on smooth surfaces like this is fine. It's a perfectly good ride quality. On the bumpier roads, I did notice it was kind of bouncy a tad. Oh, God. I'm literally not trying to spin the tires there, folks. Like you just go anywhere near the throttle and you're in a corner and it just spins the tires because, again, eco-minded tires. But does it feel like a premium EV? No. I mean, something like even the Volkswagen ID4 comes close to this in price, but it just feels a lot more sophisticated because it's a rear drive vehicle, because it has a fully independent suspension. Going around this corner here, you can feel the soft suspension translates into lots of body lean. But at least the steering feels nice. Visibility also is pretty good. I do like how Chevy throws in some great tech in this car. You've got their digital camera rear mirror, you've got blind spot monitoring, or cross traffic alert, and this model here has Super Cruise. The Super Cruise feature, this is the first Chevy to get Super Cruise, and it's one of the best semi-automated driver assistance tech on the market. This is offering true hands-free level driver assistance on highways, of course. It doesn't do the automatic lane changes like what I've tested in some of the new Cadillacs, but the fact that it's here in this economy-minded hatchback really, brings, or it shows customers that Chevy is serious about the Bolt and technology, although the fact that they didn't add all-wheel drive could be a deal breaker for some. I think the range is perfectly acceptable considering the price. It has really good real-world range. The charging, however, of this vehicle is slow. 50 kilowatt max DC fast charging means you're going to be spending about an hour to an hour and a half at the DC fast charger when you're on a longer road trip. So longer road trips in this car are just far more inconvenient when you have vehicles that'll do that in 30 minutes or less. This car will take at least an hour. So that was kind of an area where Chevrolet could have bumped up the DC fast charging, but this is, remember, built off of an old platform. This is nowhere near the GM Ultium platform, and that's why this vehicle is so affordable. It's because of that. It's because it's built on an older platform. The seats in this car, however, I will say that Chevy, the Bolt, had really terrible seats in the first gen. This new one, I'm driving the Premier model with the leather seats. The leather feels okay. It feels more like leatherette, but I'm okay with that. The seat, however, still feels rather narrow. It doesn't feel like it offers much support on my longer trips. I noticed that my back was starting to ache. And you also feel how narrow this car is. Because it's so narrow, you sit super close to your front seat passenger, so you kind of have to get used to, or if you don't like your front seat passenger, it's a little uncomfortable, but that's kind of a personal thing. But Americans do like their sense of space, and this is where they could have made the Bolt EUV a wider vehicle to accommodate, a little bit more interior space. But what the beauty of that is, if you're okay with that, this is a really easy car to daily drive, especially if you live around town. It's got plenty of power to squirt around. It has really good usable real-world range, and aside from the fact that you can't get all-wheel drive in this vehicle, and it has a slow DC fast charging capability, the very, very attractive price should entice a lot of buyers, especially once the federal tax credit comes back into play for this particular car in early 2023. Now, after spending a full week with the 2023 Bolt EUV, as much as I want to rag on this car for being kind of a dorky, economy-minded, long-range electric hatchback, I have to say there are some qualities about the Bolt that make it very, very tempting for those of you who want to go into an electric vehicle and you don't want to break the bank. Obviously, the seats in this car, I think they're an improvement, but they're still not super comfortable for me. I just don't like the narrow feeling of the cabin. I don't like how Chevy puts these skinny tires on the car, where it always slips the wheels every time you just remotely go near the throttle for just a smidge second to accelerate and pass somebody. I would have liked to see them do all-wheel drive, but really it's the slow DC fast charging that could be a deal breaker for some. I mean, 50 kilowatts is just really pathetic in today's market. 150 kilowatts is already starting to be slow. Everybody now is going after that 350 max kilowatt fast charging, which means if you see one of these parked at one of those chargers, you better go tell that Bolt owner that they need to move the vehicle, because they're hogging a charger for a vehicle that doesn't have the capability to charge that quickly. Now, in terms of the real world range, I was impressed with the 250-ish miles in my actual testing. 0 to 60 in 6.8 seconds is perfectly acceptable. Would be a lot faster if this vehicle had better tires and an available all-wheel drive system. And the interior itself has some pretty good tech, still kind of cheap materials, but the bigger back seat is definitely a nice plus. The cargo area is a little bit on the small side, but really you can probably overlook a lot of the complaints that I have with this car when you look at the price, because when Chevy first introduced this vehicle in 2021, it had a starting price of around $33,500. It was about $2,000 more versus the regular Bolt, which you can still get for around $31,500. This car here last year would have been around $44,000 fully equipped, which I would have told you is too expensive for something like this. However, Chevy has reduced the price of this car by $6,300 this year, and when we go into January 2023, because of that new EV tax law, this does and will qualify for the $7,500 full federal tax credit. So because of that price reduction, this car now starts at $27,200. This model here is around $36,000 fully equipped. And then when you add in that tax credit for those of you who are buying starting in January 2023, that will actually reduce the price of this car to under $30,000. So again, if you're looking for a cheap EV that does realistically 250 miles of range, and you don't need all-wheel drive and you don't need the DC fast charging capability, this could very well be the perfect vehicle for a lot of you, and it really just allows this electric vehicle like this to be far more attainable, because most of them, again, are well over $50,000. So I have to give Chevy credit here for offering something that is so darn affordable. But with all that said, hope you guys have enjoyed my full overview on the 2023 Chevrolet Bolt EUV. If you're also looking to see the latest cars I'm testing, be sure to follow me on Instagram at Redline_reviews, like us on Facebook, and as always, guys, please keep subscribing to the Redline Reviews YouTube channel for all the latest reviews. Thank you so much for watching. I'll catch you all in the next video.